She wasn't looking at me the way kids usually do, that open, curious, slightly unfocused look they get when they're just existing in a room. She was watching me the way someone watches a door they're not sure is locked. My mother-in-law had been living with us for 11 months by then. After my father-in-law passed, my husband said it was the right thing to do. He said it without asking me. I didn't fight it because I loved him, and because she was 73, and because I told myself that's what family does. Her name was Opal, and Opal had dementia. That's what my husband told me. That's what his brother told me. That's what everyone told me at Thanksgiving and at Easter. And every time I tried to have a conversation with her that lasted more than 4 minutes before she'd go quiet and stare past my shoulder like I'd stopped existing. She has good days and bad days, my husband said. Don't push her. I didn't push her. I made her tea every morning. I drove her to her appointments. I learned which television programs she liked and which ones made her agitated. I reorganized the bathroom so her medications were easier to reach. I did everything right. But she watched me, and I couldn't figure out why. My husband's name is Seth. We'd been married for 4 years when his father died. Before that, we were happy. Genuinely, quietly happy in the way that doesn't make for good stories but makes for a good life. We had a house in Raleigh, North Carolina. We had a rescue dog named something ridiculous that Seth picked out, a mutt with one ear up and one ear down who slept at the foot of our bed. We had date nights and minor arguments about whose turn it was to empty the dishwasher, and a savings account we were building toward a trip to Portugal. Then his father died. And then Opal moved in. And then things started to shift in ways so small I couldn't point to any single moment and say, there. That's where I lost him. Seth's brother is named Cormac. He's 3 years older than Seth, divorced twice, runs a property management company out of Charlotte. He came around a lot after Opal moved in. More than he ever had when his father was alive. He'd show up on Sundays with takeout, and he and Seth would sit at the kitchen table talking in low voices while I was in the other room, and when I came in, they'd change the subject. I told myself it was grief. I told myself brothers process things differently. I told myself a lot of things that year. Opal's room was down the hall from ours. I'd pass her door at night sometimes on the way to the bathroom, and I could see the light from her television under the door, always on, even at 2 in the morning. I asked her doctor about it. He said sleep disruption was common. He said to keep her routine consistent. What I didn't know then, what I had no way of knowing, was that Opal wasn't watching television. She was listening. She was listening to everything that happened in that house, and she understood every word of it, and she had been waiting for the right moment to tell me what she'd heard. It started with the will. Not that I knew it at the time. I found out much later that Opal's husband had left behind considerably more than anyone had let on. A life insurance policy, a retirement account, and this is the part that mattered, partial ownership in 3 commercial properties that Cormac managed. Properties that, if sold, would have generated somewhere between $800,000 and $1.2 million. Seth was supposed to inherit half. Per the original will, witnessed and filed, both sons were equal beneficiaries. I didn't know any of this. Seth had never mentioned the properties to me. Not once in 4 years of marriage. I knew about the life insurance. We talked about that after the funeral, briefly, and the number he gave me was enough to cover the mortgage on the Charlotte house his parents had lived in, which was going into Opal's name. That was it. That was the whole picture he gave me. Except it wasn't. The Sunday that changed everything started like any other Sunday. Seth and Cormac were going to look at something. Seth said it was a property issue. Paperwork would probably take a few hours. I said fine. I was used to these trips by then. The dog needed a bath. I had a pile of work from my job that I'd been avoiding, and the refrigerator had been making a sound I needed to call someone about. I had plenty to do. What I didn't expect was to come home from taking the dog on a walk and find Opal standing in the kitchen doorway. She was in her housecoat, her hair was down, which was unusual. She always wore it pinned up, and she was holding a small glass bottle, the kind that vitamin supplements come in, and she was holding it out toward me. Don't, she said. That was the whole word. Just don't. I thought she was confused. I smiled at her and said, "Don't what, Opal? Are you okay?" I came toward her to take the bottle from her hand because she was gripping it too tightly, and I was worried she'd drop it. She didn't let go. "Don't drink what he puts in it," she said. The smile stayed on my face for a second before my brain caught up with the words. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Her eyes were completely clear. Not the unfocused, slightly filmed look I'd gotten used to. Sharp, pleasant, tracking. "What did you say?" "The tea," she said. "He puts something in it." I stood there with my hand still outstretched and my wet dog panting against my leg, and I cannot describe what happened to me in that moment, other than to say that the room felt very small and very still all at once. "Opal." My voice came out careful. Do you know where you are right now?" She gave me a look that I can only describe as deeply unimpressed. "I'm in my son's kitchen," she said. "I've been in my son's kitchen for 11 months. I know exactly where I am." We sat down at the table. I didn't plan to, my legs just sort of decided. She sat across from me and she put the bottle down between us, and she folded her hands and she looked at me the way she always looked at me. That careful, watchful look I'd always read as confusion, and I understood, with a lurch that felt physical, that I had been misreading it the entire time. She wasn't confused. She was calculating. She was watching and cataloging and protecting. "How long?" I said. "Since February," she said. It was October. I pressed my hands flat on the table because they were shaking, and I did not want her to see them shake. "How do you know?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Because I watched your face in the mornings after the tea. You'd get a headache. You'd be tired for the rest of the day. You'd forget things. Small things first, where you put your keys, what you were going to say, then bigger things." She paused. "I know what that looks like from the outside." Something cold moved through me. "Opal. I was a nursing assistant for 22 years, she said, before I retired." Her voice was matter-of-fact, the voice of someone who had been waiting a long time to say something and was now finally saying it. "I know what heavy metal poisoning looks like. I know what heavy bees metal poisoning looks like. I know what sedatives do over time. I know what happens to a person who is being slowly, carefully made to seem like she is losing her mind." The kitchen was very quiet. The refrigerator made its sound. "He was going to say you needed care," she said, "same as he said about me." There is a moment in a crisis. I don't know if everyone experiences this, but I have now, twice in my life, where the adrenaline hasn't hit yet, and the grief hasn't hit yet. And what you're left with is this odd, floating clarity. Like your brain has temporarily suspended all emotional processing in order to simply function. I was in that moment. I said, "Tell me everything." And she did. She told me that her dementia diagnosis had been arranged, that the Dr. Cormac recommended, the one who had evaluated her after her husband died, the one who had filed the paperwork that gave Seth medical power of attorney, had been paid. She didn't have proof of that. But she told me what she did have proof of. She had spent 11 months pretending to be confused while being, in fact, completely lucid, because she had overheard enough conversations to know that the moment she was seen as competent, she would become a problem. She told me that Cormac and Seth had been working together to redirect their father's estate, that the 3 commercial properties were already in the process of being transferred through a series of LLC filings and amended documents into a trust that Cormac controlled, that Seth was to receive a lump sum payment. She didn't know the exact number once certain things were finalized. Certain things. She said it carefully, but I understood what she meant. The divorce paperwork. Oh, and she said this next part gently, watching my face. The other option. The option that took longer to arrange but didn't require a court date. I thought about the headaches, the fatigue, the forgetting. 8 months of me chalking it all up to stress, to adjustment, to the difficulty of having my mother-in-law in the house. 8 months of Seth bringing me my morning tea while I was still half asleep. kissing me on the forehead, saying, "Love you, have a good day." I excused myself and I went to the bathroom and I sat on the edge of the tub and I breathed very slowly for about 3 minutes. Then I came back out. "Okay," I said, "here's what we're going to do. I want to be clear about something. I didn't handle this calmly because I'm a calm person. I'm not, particularly. I handled it calmly because Opal was 73 years old and had been carrying this alone for the better part of a year, pretending to be someone she wasn't in order to stay alive and useful, and she had just trusted me with the entire weight of it. She deserved someone steady across the table from her. I could fall apart later, and I did, but not then. The first thing I did was call my sister, not Seth, not a friend. My sister, who is a paralegal in Greensboro and who has, her entire life, been the person I call when something is genuinely wrong because she doesn't panic and she doesn't minimize and she knows the difference between a problem and a crisis. I told her the short version. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Don't touch the tea. Don't touch the CF anything. Get yourself and Opal out of the house before he gets home and go to an urgent care first. Then call me back." That's my sister. No drama. Just steps. Opal didn't want to go to urgent care. She said she was fine. She hadn't been the one being poisoned. I told her that her testimony would matter a great deal more if she had a current on record evaluation showing she was cognitively intact. She thought about that for a second and then she put her shoes on. The urgent care did a cognitive assessment on Opal at my request. She scored in the completely normal range. The nurse practitioner who administered it raised an eyebrow and said, "She's sharp as a tack." I said, "Yes, I know. That's actually why we're here." I asked them to document it. For myself, I requested a blood panel, the full one, the kind that checks for heavy metals and common sedatives. I told them I'd been experiencing fatigue and cognitive fog and headaches for several months. They took it seriously. They said results would take a few days. Then I called my sister back. She told me she'd spoken to an attorney she knew, someone who handled both family law and some criminal work, and that he could see us the following morning. That night, Opal and I stayed at a hotel. I paid with my own credit card, a card Seth didn't know about, one I'd had before we were married and never closed. I am not a suspicious person by nature. I had kept that card out of inertia, not foresight. I have never in my life been more grateful for my own laziness. We ordered room service, soup for her, something I could barely eat for me. And we sat in the hotel room with the television on low, and I asked her to tell me the rest of it. All of it. Everything she'd seen and heard. She talked for 2 hours. I took notes on my phone. She was precise and organized, and she had the particular competence of someone who had spent a long career working in situations where details mattered and errors had consequences. She told me dates, times, the names of people who had come to the house when I was at work. She told me about a conversation she'd overheard in December, Seth on the phone in the garage, where he told whoever was on the other end that it would look natural, that the timeline was the issue, that they needed to be patient. She told me she had kept a journal, written in the small notebook she'd hidden inside the lining of a winter coat, the kind of hiding place that made sense if you'd ever lived in a time or circumstance where keeping certain things private was a matter of survival. I asked her why she hadn't said something sooner. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I needed to know you were worth the risk." I didn't know what to say to that. "You are," she said, simply, like it was a conclusion she'd reached through deliberate evaluation and was now prepared to stand behind. "You are worth the risk." The attorney's name I won't include here. What I will say is that he spent 40 minutes with us the next morning, and at the end of it he said, "We have enough to move forward, and the medical evidence, if it comes back the way I expect, will make this significantly stronger." It came back the way he expected. The blood panel showed elevated levels of a sedative compound. Not dramatically elevated, but chronically so. The kind of levels you see in someone who has been receiving low, consistent doses over an extended period of time. The kind of levels that explained every brain fog morning of the past 8 months. I want to say that reading that report felt like vindication. It didn't, not immediately. Mostly it felt like grief. like standing in the wreckage of something you'd built carefully over years and understanding, for the first time, how deliberately it had been taken apart. Seth was interviewed by a detective 2 weeks later. He denied everything. He cried. He said Opal was confused, that her dementia had progressed, that she was confabulating, making up stories that felt real to her. He said I was having some kind of breakdown and had turned his mother against him. The detective set a printed copy of Opal's cognitive evaluation on the table in front of him. He stopped crying. Cormac lawyered up immediately, which is its own kind of answer. I will tell you the part that comes next, because people always want to know how it ended, and I think they deserve to know, and I also think the ending matters as much as the story. The DA's office filed charges. Seth was charged with domestic assault by poisoning. The specific statute in North Carolina covers the intentional administration of a harmful substance to a spouse. Cormac was charged with financial fraud and elder abuse related to Opal's falsified medical documentation and the estate transfers. The doctor who had signed off on Opal's dementia diagnosis was referred to the state medical board. His license is under review. The estate, the properties, the accounts, the life insurance proceeds is being sorted out by a probate court in Mecklenburg County. It is not a fast process. None of this is a fast process. But Opal has an attorney of her own now, a sharp woman from a firm in Charlotte who called me to say thank you, which made me cry in the parking lot of a grocery store in a way I hadn't cried yet through any of the rest of it. I filed for divorce. That paperwork at least moved quickly. Seth and I don't speak. His attorney and my attorney speak in the way that attorneys do, and I receive occasional updates through channels that feel nothing like the life I thought I was living a year ago. Opal lives with my sister now. That wasn't planned. My sister has a house with a spare room that her youngest just moved out of, and Opal mentioned once that she'd always liked the idea of living near a garden, and my sister has a half-acre in Greensboro that she's been slowly turning into something she found in the magazine. They have improbably and wonderfully become genuine friends. My sister texts me pictures sometimes, the two of them at the garden center, Opal in a wide-brimmed hat, both of them looking extremely pleased with themselves about some purchase I don't fully understand. I look at those pictures for a long time. There's a version of the story where I say I'm okay now, that I've healed, that I have clarity and peace and all the things you're supposed to arrive at after something like this. I'm working on it. Most days I believe I'll get there. I drink my coffee alone in the mornings, and I let myself sit with the fact that the clearest-eyed, most honest person in that house, the one who saw everything, who protected me when I couldn't protect myself, who calculated the risk and decided I was worth it, was a 73-year-old woman who everyone had written off as confused. She was never confused. She was the only one who knew exactly what was going on. I think about that. I think about how often we decide without meaning to that certain people have nothing left to offer, that they've passed some invisible threshold after which their observations don't count, their instincts don't matter, their watchfulness is just a symptom of decline. I think about how dangerous that assumption is, and I think about Opal, writing in her little notebook inside her coat lining, patient and precise, waiting for the right moment. I got a postcard from her last month, Greensboro postmark. On the front, a picture of a flower I didn't recognize. On the back, in her careful, even handwriting, 4 words. The garden is good. I have it on my refrigerator. I look at it every morning, and every morning it means something slightly different, and every morning it is enough. I keep coming back to the notebook. Not the court documents, not the blood panel, not the attorney's voice on the phone telling me the charges had been filed. The notebook, small, spiral-bound, hidden inside the lining of a winter coat by a woman everyone had already decided was gone. Opal didn't have to do any of it. She could have stayed quiet. She had, in fact, stayed quiet for nearly a year, not out of fear alone, but out of something more careful than fear. She was waiting to know whether I was worth the risk. That deliberateness, that patience, that refusal to act until she understood the full shape of what she was dealing with. That's not confusion. That's not decline. That's a kind of intelligence that most people never develop, because most people never have to. I think about the version of me that existed before that Sunday. I was tired all the time, and I thought it was stress. I was forgetting things, and I thought it was the adjustment of having someone else in the house. I had explanations for everything because I trusted the person who had given me the framework for understanding my own life. When someone you love hands you a story about yourself, it is very hard to set it down and look at it clearly. It took a 73-year-old woman with a hidden notebook to hand me a different story, one that was true. What Seth and Cormac did required a specific kind of moral failure, not a sudden one, not a crime of passion, but a slow, deliberate decision made over and over again across months and years. Every morning, Seth brought me that tea. He made a choice. That repetition is what I find hardest to sit with. Not the betrayal as a single event, but as a practice, a habit, something he had apparently made peace with. And Opal had watched all of it. She had watched her own son become someone she didn't recognize, and she had made a different choice. Every day she stayed quiet and kept writing in that notebook. She was also choosing. She chose to protect a daughter-in-law over a son. She chose honesty over the easier thing. That took a kind of moral backbone that I don't think gets named often enough because it's unglamorous. It's not a dramatic confrontation. It's just a woman writing in a notebook every night, holding on to the truth because she refused to let it disappear. I think about what it takes to do that. The clarity it requires to keep seeing something accurately when everything around you is designed to make you doubt your own perception. Opal had that clarity. She didn't perform it. She didn't announce it. She just kept it quietly until the right moment. The right moment turned out to be me coming back from a dog walk on a Sunday afternoon, which is not exactly the heroic, inciting event of a movie. Life is like that. The hinge moments are ordinary on the outside. I am 31 years old, and I have learned something that I hope I don't forget. The people who seem to have nothing left to offer are often the ones who have been paying the most attention. The ones who've been written off, talked over, underestimated. They are sometimes the only ones in the room who are seeing things clearly. Opal wasn't diminished, she was conserving. There's a difference, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to remember it. The postcard is still on my refrigerator. The garden is good. 4 words from a woman who spent a year pretending she couldn't string 4 words together. I look at it every morning and I think she endured. She observed. She waited. And when the moment came, she acted. That's enough of a lesson for one lifetime. Probably more.